Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video tutorial under JavaScript for beginners, and in this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at another type of animation using simple JavaScript, and in this case, we are going to be performing scaling animation. So in the previous couple of videos, we've seen the timing function, and in the last video of this JavaScript playlist, we also saw the fade in and fade out animation effect using simple JavaScript. So this is sort of like the part 2 on animations, and we're going to be doing scaling as I mentioned. Okay, so let's get started. As you can see on the screen, I have a simple heart image which we are going to be scaling up and scaling down, so it will be creating effect of heartbeat or heartbeat pumping. So I think that will look pretty cool once we get with the coding. So in the coding part right now, what we have is our basic HTML body. We have two breaks so that the heart comes a little bit down, and then I have a simple image which is having an ID of img1, and I'm loading this image from the images folder, and the image name is heart.png. You can load any image, you can download it from the internet. So this is that image in the folder, and this is our default.html file. So I'm loading it from the images folder. Okay, so I've given it a basic width of 100, and in the JavaScript we still have to write down the entire code of zooming in or scaling in and scaling out. Okay, so this is something that we're going to be doing, and we are going to be needing the timing functions, that is the set interval and clear interval. So if you have missed that video in this playlist, go check that out because that is important. Okay, so let's get started with the coding, and what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm not going to be having any button to scale in and scale out. We're going to be using the mouse on over event and mouse on out. Okay, so on mouse over and on mouse event. So we've seen this events in the previous tutorials also. So basically this event is called whenever our mouse pointer comes in on the image, and whenever you remove this mouse pointer from the image, the mouse on out event is called. Okay, so just to check this, you can add two alerts. So I can say alert, I can say on mouse over, copy this, and here also I can say on mouse out. So this is just popping out alert messages to check the on mouse over and on mouse events. So if I come and hover it on over, you can see on mouse over called. If I say okay, on mouse out called because I moved out from the heart, right? So once you go outside from this image, the on mouse out is also called. Okay, so this means this is working. So right now what I'm calling is increase function and decrease function, which we have to create in the JavaScript. So let's get started with that. So let's start off with increase function. So in increase, we are going to be performing scaling, obviously. That is, we will perform scaling in. So let's do that. So I'm going to say function increase. Inside this, we are going to be calling the set interval method. So I'm going to say set interval. Set interval method requires two parameters. The first one is a reference to a function, and the second one is the interval time in milliseconds. So I'm going to say zoom in, and I'm going to say 20 milliseconds. Okay, so this zoom in is another function which we have to create, inside which we will have the code of the increasing of the width. So we're going to be changing the width at every iteration. So this is the idea over here. So let's create this zoom in function also. So I'm going to say function zoom in. Now here what we have to do is we have to check the width of the image. Okay, so initially, as you can see, we have set the width value as 100, and this is something that we are setting to the image also, but this line of code is not being executed because this has to happen on some event, right? So if you comment it out, it won't have any effect on the code actually. I just wrote it because this is something that we're going to be using in the code. So now what we're going to be doing is, we know that when we have initially loaded it, we know that the width is 100 because we have explicitly set it over here. You can change it from here also, and the image will increase, but right now let's keep it 100 pixels. So in the zoom in function, what we have to do is we have to check for this width value. So we're going to say if width is less than 200, we have to say width is equal to width plus difference. So this difference is another variable, and the value is 2. So what we are going to be doing is, every time zoom in function is going to be called after 20 milliseconds, the width value is going to be increasing by 2 units, that is 2 pixels. And initially the width value is 100, right? So after first iteration, the width will be 100 plus difference, which is 2, 102. Then again, zoom in will be called after 20 milliseconds. It will be checked. So 102 is less than 200. So again, 2 will be added into that value, right? And then we also have to use this document.getElementById to set the new width, right? So this is something that we'll do over here. And once it reaches the 200 mark, that is, once the width of the image reaches 200, we want to clear this interval also, because otherwise this set interval will keep on calling zoom in after every 20 milliseconds. So something has to stop it. So this is where the interval ID comes into picture. So I'm going to create one more variable, interval ID, set it to 0 initially, and this set interval will return the interval ID of the timer which is set inbuilt, which schedules this zoom in after every 20 milliseconds. So in order to stop that timer, we have to use this interval ID in the else part of the zoom in function, and we have to say clear interval and pass the interval ID. So this is something that we've seen in the timing functions, that is clear interval and set interval functions. So let's see if this works. Right now what we are calling is on mouse over, we are calling the increase function. So this increase function has only one line of code which sets the timer for 20 milliseconds and it calls in zoom in after every 20 milliseconds. And in the zoom in function, what we are doing is we are checking the width. If it is less than 200, we are increasing it by 2 units or 2 pixels. We are setting that new width to the image by using the document.getElementById.style.width property. And once it reaches 200, we are clearing the interval. So we will stop the timer from calling the zoom in function. So let's see, let's try to hover on the image, and there you go, you can see it got increased, right? So it was 100 initially, it became 200. Now if you want to check for this value, you can use the console.log again. So I'm going to say console.log. Inside I'm going to pass this width. Coming on the browser, hit F12 and you can see the console being loaded over here. Now if you hover on the image, you can see the console values go till 200, right? And we got an uncaught exception because we still have to define the on mouse out event. So we have not created the decrease function yet, right? So that's why this error was coming. Otherwise you can see this value 200. After 200 it stops. So now let's create the decrease function also. So like function increase, we can go ahead and create the decrease function also. Inside this, instead of zoom in, we have to say zoom out. Again 20 milliseconds for that. So we still have to create the zoom out function. So just like zoom in, we have to create zoom out also. So I'm just gonna copy paste this entire zoom in and just replace it with the name of zoom out. But here we have to check for the width being greater than 100. Okay, so if the width is greater than 100, we have to bring it back to 100, right? Instead of zooming in and zoom out, you can say expand and shrink, you know. This makes more sense and it is more readable. So here I'm gonna change zoom in to expand and here zoom out to shrink. Okay, so in shrinking we have to reduce the size. So we have to check if the width is greater than 100, we have to bring it back to 100, right? So I'm gonna say width is equal to width minus the difference and set this width to that image using the document.getElementById, and we'll also log it in the console. So let's see if this works. So I'm gonna hover on it, it increases to 200. I'm gonna remove the mouse from the image now and you can see it goes back to 100. So our basic animation is done, but there is a issue over here which we still haven't figured out. I'm gonna show it to you. If I hover it and before increasing to its full size, if I remove the mouse, so let me just show you. If I do this and if I just remove it, you can see it becomes a little weird. It keeps on pulsating, and that is because the set interval has been set, the timer has been set, but clear interval did not get called. So just notice in the code, the clear interval is only called when the width reaches 200. But in this case, what I did is I did not let it reach 200, right? So that's why the timer was still kept on. And that's why this image is increasing and shrinking every time, because both these intervals are being set. That is, both expand and shrink is being called now, because both on mouse over and on mouse out were called. And before we actually could clear the interval, we never reached this stage, right? We never reached the else part because the width never increased or never reached 200. So that's why we have to use this clear interval at this stage also. That is before we actually call the set interval. Okay. So this will resolve that issue. So now if I hover it and remove it, you can see it is happening properly. Now I can increase and decrease the speed. I can say 10 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds. If I hover it, it will happen a little faster. And this is how you can create that smooth heartbeat animation on hover and when you move out of that image. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope you got this cool animation of scaling. And in this way, you can use plain JavaScript to perform basic animations. So in the previous video, we saw fade in and fade out. Here we saw basic scaling. But you can see that we have to write a lot of code to perform these basic animations. And when you move to jQuery, these animations can be written in one line of code. And you'll see how we do that when we move ahead to basics of jQuery also as we move along in this series. And yeah, that's it for this video, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Do let me know in the comments how this video was. Share it with your friends. And see you guys in the next video. Peace.